Welcome to another fantastic episode of Grasp a Confidence Podcast. Just wanted to let you guys know as you're listening to this podcast today, you're going to have a lot of synergies with my next guest. So many of our listeners on Grasp Confidence Podcast are entrepreneurs or they're thinking about transitioning to entrepreneurship. Maybe they're afraid to jump, maybe they're not sure what next steps to do. And that's why I brought my next guest on. My next guest is Lisa Edmondson. And Lisa and I met on LinkedIn, as many of my guests do meet on LinkedIn. It's a great place for networking. If you're not on there, I
Absolutely.
encourage you to go on there.
Yeah.
But I met Lisa on there about last year, and we had a really good conversation and got to know each other. And I will let you introduce yourself, Lisa, to our audience.
Okay. Thank you. I am Lisa Edmondson. I actually am I guess, recovering corporate girl. Um, my entire career has been in the corporate space, and I was unexpectedly launched into, the space of solopreneurship. And so that's kind of what I've been doing for the past 2 years. And it's actually worked out for the better for me at this point. So really excited to be having this conversation with you and discussing how confidence plays into that unexpected type of scenario. So thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. The only certain thing in life is change. I've talked about that many of times on my podcast and other live shows. We never know when our lives are going to change. It happens, right? And a lot of times we think, even, we're in a corporate career, we're in that in that construct of corporate environment, and we think we're in a safe space, don't we, Lisa? It's really easy to
Yeah.
think that we're safe and our jobs are secure, but not all of the time, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I had been in this job for almost 11 years, and so at that point you think, okay, I can, I'm pretty safe. But really quite frankly depends on the dynamics that you're working in. So a change in leadership,
Mm.
and just like that, Lisa no longer has a job. So it could be as something, as simple as that, or it could be, the company is having mass layoffs. I know that impacts a lot of people sometimes. So yeah, so it's feels like it's a safe space because I think because you get the recurring paycheck, but it's not uh, um, a solution, that doesn't have its faults. So it can go either way. But for me, yeah, it took me unexpectedly, being kicked out of that safe space to kind of embrace the alternative, which is entrepreneurship.
Wow, sounds pretty similar to me, although I decided to leave. But yes, it is strikingly similar, right?
Hmm.
And it takes a lot. First off, if you get let go, it takes a hit on your confidence.
Hmm.
And then somehow you have to muster up more confidence, even though you just had a huge hit to it, to go into entrepreneurship. Because, Lisa, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know many other things that take more courage and confidence than being an entrepreneur. Do you?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure this is one of the scariest things I've ever done.
Yes.
But it's working out. And so I think, and it's ironic that you mentioned that too, because when are like me, unexpectedly thrown into the world of entrepreneurship, um, I kind of had to literally start all over because I had never had any desire to be an entrepreneur, never had any desire to have my own company, so it was just kind of a series of random events that led me to that path. And it was because mostly once I was laid off from my job, I wanted to write about it. I like to write. And so in my head, I was thinking, to help me get through the emotional, turmoil of being let go after that long, I was like, I need to write about it. I need to blog. And then it just kind of led to, well, if I'm going to blog, then I should probably have a website. If I have a website, I should probably have a company, and so it literally was like Not a lot of forethought put into it. But it was just like in a matter of like 3 days, I suddenly had an LLC, and I'm like, okay, now what? Now what do I do? But that's when I started writing my book too, and so it was a lot of working through, emotions, and having to go through that catharsis of getting all that out of my system first, and that was why I wrote my book, because it was kind of, I knew I needed to get past that to move on, and not be bitter. And in my head, I was thinking, and I'll get back to corporate someday, and then it just kind of has worked out to where I haven't really gone back to corporate. So, and I'm kind of liking what I'm doing. So it's worked out for me, actually.
So it gives everybody out there a little bit of hope, right? That sometimes, these failures are blessings in disguise. And honestly, a higher version of ourself kind of comes to the surface when we are faced with certain challenges, obstacles, and hardships, because it forces creative thinking. And I think that is really important. When we think creatively, we can turn that, as you said, you wanted to share your story, you wanted to help other people, and you turned that into the written word, but with blogging and then eventually a website. And I
Mhm.
know you're an award-winning instructional designer as well. So, you've accomplished great things, but it took some confidence, it took some courage. And again, it's just not easy when you've gotten a hit.
Mhm.
How did you overcome just putting in the action, putting in the motion?
Mhm.
What would you say was something that really helped you gain the confidence to actually pursue this dream?
Yeah. And that's a good question, because before that happened, I would have never even imagined, that I could even survive something like that, right? You think your
Yeah.
life is over, right? I mean, it's like the end of the world. But ironically, I went out to LinkedIn for the first time in, like 11 years. I had joined back in 20.
Wow.
I joined in 2011. Just general, put my name on there. Never touched it after that. And so literally, yeah, so this is like 2022. I went out to LinkedIn and I'm like, what's going on in the rest of the world? Because you're in your own little bubble when you're in corporate, right? And
Mhm.
there's a lot going on out there. And I stumbled across, just a couple of connections that led to more connections and more, and including you. And I think you might have been part of that Social Saturday thing that happened back then. Yeah, and just met lots and lots of people. And so really, it was having other people um, that were kind and
Mhm.
compassionate and helpful, that kind of restored my faith in humanity, right? Because, at that point, you're like, everybody's hateful, everybody's mean, they're just, people are bad. But LinkedIn, the people on there that I came across, they were very kind, very helpful, not self-serving, willing to help you out and that kind of thing. In fact, I think that's how you and I connected, because I think I had a question, about something you had done, and you just, kind of offered me your advice.
Mhm.
Um, and so it was literally like creating a whole new realm of contacts, people that I had never would have met before.
Yep.
And people that I feel, quite frankly, are really close friends at this point. I mean, these are people that I text, every day and talk to every day. I had lunch with them, one of them a couple of weeks ago, that happened to be local. And so in my head, I'm thinking I never would have met these people if I
Yeah.
hadn't have been let go from that job. And so I'm so grateful for it. But yeah, so surrounding myself with some positive, supportive people, it really made it easy to kind of, get over that whole, it's the end of the world because I lost my job kind of thing, and make me feel hopeful. And then also give me, other possibilities. It's like, have you tried this? Well, what about this? And I know this person, and let me put you in contact with that person. And so it really was just, having the right people around me. And I stumbled across it, but I'm thankful for it, because it's led me, to places that I never ever would have dreamed of going before. But I'm glad, that I made it there. So yeah.
Well, I'm glad that I was a part of you having your faith in humanity restored. That makes me feel good.
Right?
Um,
That's not normal anymore, is it?
it's not right,
Mm.
but it is possible, with the right approach and the right mindset and intention, I believe that. But
Mhm.
that's exactly how you and I connected. So you, were thinking about writing a book, and, I can't remember if I had already published my book or not. I can't remember where the timeline was. But you asked me about just, my general process, and I helped, right?
Mhm.
As
Yeah.
much as I could. I
Mhm.
was very honest. I told you I'm a writer, not an editor. Don't ask
Right?
anything about editing. No clue. Can't do it. If
Exactly.
you pay me to do it, that's a mistake because I'm not good at editing, right?
You were ill-advised.
Very ill-advised. Don't come to me with that. But I can help with marketing, I can help with
Yes.
branding, I
Mhm.
can help with just writing process or some kind of strategy.
Mhm.
But we help each other, and that's how communities are formed.
Yeah.
And you know what? You bring up a really good point that I talk about all the time. So many people think confidence only belongs inside of themselves. And while it does, let me tell you, everyone who's listening right now, it's also your outside environment, the people you surround yourself with, the company you keep. If your outside environment is not conducive for growth, puts you down, makes you feel less than, bullies you,
Mhm.
demeans you any kind of way, your confidence, how could it grow?
Right.
How?
Mm.
It's an inside game, but the outside is out as important. It's very much
Yeah.
think of yourself as that ecosystem.
Mhm.
What you think of internally in your mind counts
Mhm.
just the same as your outside environment.
Mhm.
And you and I have very similar stories about being bullied in corporate, not feeling like we're fitting in, feeling almost like a black sheep.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it brought down my confidence tremendously, Lisa.
Mhm. Yeah. Same here. Same here. And it's funny because you don't realize how down you were until you come out of it, you know? Like I had no idea that, I had gotten, I mean, and fortunately for me, the turnaround between new boss and, let's get rid of Lisa was about 6 months. So it wasn't like a long, period of being, beaten down into submission. But, um, it definitely, you start questioning, oh wait, well maybe I am an idiot, maybe I don't know what I'm doing, maybe I've just been faking it for 11 years, what do I know? I mean, they're really good at convincing you that you're not qualified, for example. And come to find out, ironically, after I left that company, my main thing was, of course, to figure out how to help others avoid going through what I went through. And just through a lot of research and everything, because I know for me the obvious answer was, let's just go to HR. And I very quickly found out that was not a solution for the employee. And so just, of course, in my research, that following year I call it kind of my year of discovery, because I really just learned so much. And that's the course that I won the Telly Award for, was about bullying, because I found a solution. I found a methodology through LinkedIn, through a connection, who gave me, the tools and, a way to, kind of deal with it myself. And that was my thing. It's like, how can I personally deal with this in the future if it happens again? And so that was what was important to me, is how can I defend myself? Like, I'm not stupid. I'm pretty sure fairly intelligent person. I should have been able to get out of that scenario, but I couldn't, because I had never been bullied at work before. So I wasn't even aware that I was being bullied, at first,
Oh,
until, afterwards. It's like, oh, that's gaslighting. Oh, that's sabotage. Oh, that's. And so it was literally by the book when it comes to the bullying game. But, for me, someone who'd never been in that position before, I didn't even know what was going on. So, ignorance, is sometimes bliss, but I've learned so much since then. And yeah, so the bullying thing is definitely, obviously, whole other subject area, but for sure, it was definitely a year of discovery for me, and I'm just so grateful that I went through that. And like you said, surrounded myself with people who were positive influences, and because even like your grasp, methodology, the gratitude. I
Yeah.
mean, that is so real. That is not anything that I had really ever even heard before. Be thankful for just even everyday little things. And but just through, this network and, friends and just my research and studies, it's like, find something to be grateful for. Find something to be thankful for. Everybody's got something to be thankful for. And just those little things just kind of get you through to the next day and the next day and the next day. And then before you know it, you're, thriving, and, you kind of stumble across success, and, so it just all kind of happens organically if you trust the process. And, like you preach, be grateful for, for what you have, and don't, take it for granted.
Absolutely. It's so fundamental, but you're right, we don't hear it enough.
Mm-mm.
And I look back and again, you think about some of your failures and your just mistakes and why did I do that or why did I put up with that or oh my gosh, what was I thinking?
Mhm.
And you know what? Would I have changed it? No, honestly, I wouldn't. Yeah, it was hard at the time, but you know what? It made me the person I am today. I couldn't talk about leadership in speeches, for example, if I wouldn't have faced hardships of my own in leadership in corporate environment. I couldn't speak at a place of experience without that experience.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, you know what? It was really hard at the time, but those lessons that we learn along the way are
Mhm.
building up to ultimately take us to the place that we're supposed to be,
Yeah.
and do the things that we're meant to do, the things that we're really, really good at. Sometimes
Mhm.
you have to go through some hardship in order to get there,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? But,
Yeah.
if you can have kind of gratitude along the way and kind of like, appreciate those things,
Mhm.
it'll take you from a state of lack to a state of gain, and all of a sudden you are gaining confidence.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it takes you from a almost like a finite view that you have of the world, So like I said, I kind of lived in a bubble. I had this,
Yeah.
this corporate presence, and I've been doing that forever. And then, suddenly thrust out into the big wide world, and didn't know the first thing. I mean, I literally had no clue what was happening in the rest of the world, So it was just kind of ironic. But to your point, yeah, like that experience helped me understand, okay, that's what not to do as a leader. So my book is going to be about what you should do as a leader, and that's kind of how that evolved. And so yeah, it took me a while to finish it, longer than I had intended, but I'm glad it did, because the first draft was a little bit bitter, and so I fortunately had a very straightforward editor who also met on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Who kind of said, I think this is two separate books. Like, if you want to tell your story, of being bullied, then that might be one book. But let's focus on leadership on this book. And so yeah, so she kind of helped me, get my mind straight, and then after that, it just kind of rolled off the tongue, so to speak. So yeah, so it definitely opened up my eyes to other possibilities out there. So, previously in the corporate world, my goals were, okay, senior director and then vice president. And then where do I go and then now in this world, it's like, okay, so I have my own company. I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to create this courseware, and I'm going to write a script for a movie, which is what I'm doing now. And, so just, yeah, yeah. So just things that never would have happened if I had stayed where I was. So yeah. And so much happier with this type of work, you know. Because as a leader, you know, you and I love being a people leader. I had an amazing team. And again, still very close with them today, still text them all the time. One of them is my best friend now. So, you know, that's, that was a great experience for me, and I absolutely don't regret any of it. But yeah, so I don't remember where I was going with that. So it led
That's
me.
yeah, that's good though. I mean, it leads you somewhere.
Right.
It's really all about your mindset, you know? I mean, you can take any situation and turn it bad, just like you can take any situation and turn it positive.
Mhm.
For me in my journey, when I left corporate, I actually had another corporate job already lined up.
Mhm.
Keys to the building, as they say.
Yeah.
I could have had another one, but what was interesting, I kept it was in a different state, and this was when the housing market started going crazy. The interest
Mhm.
rates started climbing,
Yeah.
house prices just went through the roof overnight. So this would have been during what, 2022, 2021, whatever.
Mhm.
2022, I think.
Mhm.
And I kept failing to secure a house in the area because every time I would go to look at another house, the price would go up 25, 30, $50,000. And
Wow.
it got to the point where it was out of range and I couldn't do it. And the house I live in now is fine. Like it was,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, I wasn't like super keen to move and change things. I
Mhm.
would have done it, but it just nothing seemed to work. I had
Yeah.
this job, it was already lined up, but I couldn't get there. And you know what? I started to realize that it was supposed to happen that way. I wasn't supposed to get there. And if I did, Lisa, I think about this all the time. If I
Yeah.
had taken that job, I wouldn't have become a writer. I wouldn't have a best-selling book, and I wouldn't have an international TEDx talk.
Mhm.
Neither of those 2 things were at all on my mind in
Mhm.
any capacity. I would have never imagined myself doing this even just 3 years ago.
Right.
Those failures kept me from a larger failure, which was
Mhm.
not realizing my potential and dreams. Holy cow, think about that.
Yeah, I absolutely can totally relate to that because, yeah, and where I was going with my story where I lost my train of thought is, you know, as a being in a leadership position, you do have a finite, you know, a set of responsibilities that you have to, you know, be responsible for. And so, in that role, you know, the creativity that, that I like, you know, was kind of, you know, second, you know, taking a back seat. And so didn't realize that until again, you know, I was thrown out into the world. And so yeah, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh well, I'm gonna create a course and I'm gonna create a book and I'm gonna, you know, write a movie and you know, whatever. And so yeah, I absolutely would never have been able to have the opportunity to even do that stuff, you know, even if I wanted to, you know, in that position because it was just too, you know, it was all consuming.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely unleashed, you know, some things that I had forgotten that I love to do, you know. And so I mean, how can that be a bad thing, right? Like, you know, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot I like doing that. It's been a while, but you know, dust off the cobwebs and there you are. And so
Yes.
it's been, yeah, it's been a joy. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh gosh. And you know what? Don't listen to anyone who tells you that you don't have a skill just because it's not in your job description.
Hmm.
I want to bring that up too because I remember some certain company telling me that they did not think I was qualified to advise them on digital marketing strategies. And then there was another company I worked for that told me I wasn't that copywriting was not in my skill set, that I was a bad writer. I have been told by former managers that my I couldn't write an email, Lisa. I had a former manager tell me I couldn't even write an email right.
Same. I did too. I did too, literally.
You can't make this stuff up.
No.
You cannot,
Yeah.
literally. And just a couple years later now, I'm an international best-selling author. I'm like, you know
Yeah.
what? I think you were a little insecure, maybe. Definitely some gaslighting in there, but it
Yes.
didn't. But we kind of internalize those things and actually start to sometimes believe
Mhm.
that that person's insecurities and their limiting beliefs are somehow our own.
Right. Yeah.
Ooh.
It backs you into a corner, and especially if it's your direct boss, who's doing that because they are in control of what you can and can't do. And so if they make you feel that, well, you're just not qualified to do this, and you have no recourse. So yeah, it's funny you bring that up about the email. I literally had the exact same.
I've actually gotten told that more than once. So, if again,
So you have
anybody,
a real problem, apparently.
I apparently I can't write an email. So I have been told that more than once, and I remember each occasion very clearly because my,
Yeah,
it's just you're just like bubbling up with anger at that point, right?
yeah.
I
It's
remember my old boss standing, behind me, watching me type an email and him saying, "That is not how you write an email."
Oh, wow.
And I had a former business partner tell me something similar.
Mm.
Obviously, gone, right? So,
Yeah,
toxicity can happen in
right.
entrepreneurship as well, so good
Yeah,
thing to pick your business partners, people that
right.
really support you because toxicity can happen anywhere, and it'll bring down your confidence in a minute if you let it.
Yeah. I
Uh,
mean,
just
it's hard.
crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's hard to, it's ironic because the toxicity is more powerful, I think, than self-confidence. And so it's almost like hard to, you know, confidence your way out of that that category because they're so convincing.
Yes.
Right? Like, I mean, they're just so convincing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think the things you said about partner too in business, of course, I don't, I'm a solopreneur, so I'm not dealing with that. But I just recently spoke with a friend of mine who was in that situation, and their potential partner was kind of undervaluing her um, before they even, signed the
Wow.
papers. And I was like, I think you bring a little bit more to the table than that. So maybe this isn't the right move for you. But definitely, if someone doesn't appreciate your skills, I mean, you can't. There's no convincing them. There's something internal to them, and so it's a waste of your time to try and you know convince them that you are
Yeah,
still.
exactly, and let their opinions be their opinions, and you know
Mhm.
what? We all have them. But yes, absolutely. Look for those warning signs, those early warning signs. It's really easy to ignore them or brush them off the table or
Mhm.
even internalize them and think, "You know what? Maybe that person's right." Especially if you really admire that person
Yeah,
and you look up to that person.
yeah,
Uh, and it really can hurt and,
mhm,
become very damaging and lead to depression, anxiety, all sorts of things.
yeah.
It's not worth it. So look for those key warning signs. You're right. If somebody doesn't appreciate you today, when will they?
Right. Yeah, you
Right?
should earn it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have to know our worth enough to understand that that is absolutely false and it is their belief system and
Mhm.
it has nothing to do with us. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And that's in any relationship, partnership, working relationship, if
Mhm.
you're employed at a company, or a personal relationship with
Mhm.
a partner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, so key, don't you think?
Yeah, and it's ironic that confidence is at the underlying, theme there because it's lack of confidence on their behalf that ends up, trickling out onto you, questioning your confidence, and so it's just it's a vicious cycle, as they say. Um,
Yes.
so yeah.
that is why I developed my signature keynote, which is how to lead confidently. Because what I took from my experience was that while I felt unconfident, you know who's even more unconfident? The least confident person in the world is a bully.
Right.
The least confident person, and I put those 2 together. So, confidence is very much personal development, but if you're a leader
Hmm.
of people,
Yeah.
you have a direct responsibility for those people.
Mhm.
And if you're not a confident leader, you know what that also leads to? Not just bullying, not just gaslighting and things like that, but it also leads to you not training people because
Yeah.
you're intimidated and afraid that
Yeah.
they will surpass you.
Yeah.
And it leads to a lot of other things that a lot of times we don't think about, we don't talk about, but
Mhm.
if you until you can be a leader of one, you can't be a leader of many.
Mhm.
And my mission with this book and helping, businesses is to have confident leaders, genuinely confident leaders that
Mhm.
instill confidence in their team.
Yeah. And I think that's where your message and my message kind of coincide because most of my book is about, you know, we have a different definition of people leaders in the world than we should have. So for example, I think we find a lot of people leaders nowadays are, the best orator, or the best the salesperson, or the best marketer, and that's those are all great, but that's not what we should be looking for in people leaders. And specifically, people leaders, really the most successful are the ones that are humble, authentic, honest, have integrity, those kind of things, and enough confidence to not be afraid to not be the smartest person in the room. Like if you're a people leader and you're the smartest person in the room, then you're probably doing something wrong, unless you inherited your team. But you should be hiring people who are smarter than you, right? Because that's how we learn as leaders. And so that was something that I had, without being taught, I guess
Mhm.
somehow organically, led that way, and just learned a lot from my own team. And I had zero turnover, so I worked with them for years. Some of them almost a decade, and they taught me just as much as I taught them. And that was one of the main things. Is I mean, I am not the smartest person in the room. That's why you're here. You're here to help, um, help fulfill, these other areas where I'm lacking, and we can learn from each other. And so, yeah, so people leaders who feel like they do have to be, the authority on everything, um, you're going to fail. I mean, there's no way you can't live up to your own, vision of what you think a people leader is if you feel like you have to be, the smartest person in the room, or, the best at, whatever it is you're leading. So, yeah, it was definitely another area for which I felt passionate about, and why, my company is named Leadership Reno, which was basically, again, no forethought put into that. It was basically more about thinking, okay, we need to renovate the type of leaders that we have out in the world today. We're doing it wrong.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so that was part of my messaging. But, again, you and I kind of violently agree in that forefront. But yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, I think everyone took away a lot of really good information today. And there's going to be a lot of people that really resonate with this message.
Mhm.
This is a message, specifically talking about corporate and working for somebody else. This is intercontinental. This is any country, any language, any culture, any company
Mhm.
has these same issues. I've never run into a company that is immune to this type of thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
So It's extremely relevant to anybody across the world. And I think, well, I know a lot of people are going to walk away inspired and hopefully motivated to believe that they are made for more, especially if they're being belittled or bullied in a work environment. Trust me, it's not worth it. And you are. So, you know what? You are worth it. Um,
Yes.
you are.
Grasp confidence.
Yes. Yes. But thank you so much, Lisa, for being a fantastic
Pleasure.
guest.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, everyone who's listening right now. Please share this episode, rate this episode. Did this episode help you? Did it add value to your life? Let us know. Send me some reviews. Let me know how which episode you liked. If there's a specific guest you'd like me to have back again for conversation number 2, I want to hear from my listeners. So let's start a conversation that goes across the globe and keep this confidence wave spreading. Lisa, thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.